Drama, and it goes the Pacers' way. A crazy game in LA, the most game of runs game of all time, and the Pacers have the final push to get it done in the final seconds. Siakam was awesome. Their last 200 seconds were perfect, and we have so much more to discuss on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Friday. Congrats, you made it through the week, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today I'm going to give you everything I have. It's 2 a.m. It was trade deadline day. This game tipped off at 10:30 p.m., and I'm going to be as crazy as that game was. Holy smokes. What was that? The Pacers get destroyed in the first quarter and then dominate the second quarter and escape LA with an insane win. The game of runs to the absolute extreme. Siakam was amazing. Mathurin was terrific. Thomas Bryant saved the day. Thomas Bryant had to do that because Myles Turner got hurt. And I want to talk a little bit about some other trades that happened ahead of the deadline that I think the Pacers care about or will matter for their outlook for the rest of this season and potentially even beyond that in some cases. But we got to talk about the games. It's what the trades are fun for, because of the games. Why does everybody forget about the games? This one was amazing. Pacers go into the Intuit Dome for the first time ever and win 119-112, the final score. And you never would have guessed that if you were on Eastern time and you turned it off after the first quarter and it was 11:15 p.m. and you said, this stinks, I'm done. Well, they won. First quarter was dreadful for the Pacers. 42-22 in favor of the Clippers, who made, I believe, 10 threes in just that quarter. They couldn't miss. Obviously, if you make 10 threes. Kawhi was great. Norm Powell was great. James Harden was great early. The Pacers had that problem they had in Utah for parts of the game and a little bit in Portland, where it felt like their offense was either too fast or too slow, but they couldn't find the right Goldilocks, pacing to what they were doing. And some of that's just that their defense was terrible. And Siakam started the first quarter. He was 1 for 5. The Pacers were 8 for 29 as a team. The Clippers made 10 threes. They made more threes than the Pacers made shots. That struck me as a game that was over. So I said, I'm going to go look up every time the Pacers have been down 20 after a quarter ended this season. So anytime that specific thing happened. So I looked. It has never happened at the end of a first quarter. That was the worst first quarter of the Pacers season. They've only been down 20 after a second quarter once. That was that game in Boston, the first of two, that back-to-back after the OKC game right after Christmas. They're down 67-45 at halftime. Every other time, it's a third or fourth quarter. So they've had 7 games this season in which they were down 20 or more at the end of any quarter. The Knicks, their second game of the season. The Hornets, the 20-point loss in Charlotte to the Hornets. The game in Houston where they got smoked. The game against the Detroit Pistons at home for the NBA Cup where they got smoked. The Boston game I just mentioned. The Spurs game in Paris. And the fourth quarter of the Portland game that they just lost. They were trailing by 20 at the end of a quarter in all those games. They lost all those games. This was the first time all season the Pacers have recovered from that. It started with their second quarter. We'll talk a little bit about that run, but the more fun part was the end. Second quarter Pacers, 42 points. They were 15 of 26, 5 of 9 from 3, and were just running all over the floor. 8 turnovers for the Clippers, who only shot 8 of 21, gave the Pacers so many chances. And they were brilliant in transition that quarter. Thomas Bryant was very good. They needed him to be, and he was. Pascal Siakam found his footing after that 1 for 5 start. Ben Mathurin went 3 for 4. Two extended runs in one quarter. I don't know if I've ever seen that, right? 22-44 turned very quickly into 37-44. 15-0 run for the Pacers after falling down 22 with 11:29 to go. 5 minutes and 19 seconds later, they were down 7. That was crazy. Already it was like, oh, they have a chance, but the Clippers might, get this going again. And they did. The Clippers immediately responded and went back up 10 and then 12 and then 13 with 3:35 to go. It goes to 58-45 after a James Harden 3. Okay, the Pacers had a nice bench run, but that's over, right? The Clippers started to figure out, no! Another response from the Pacers, who turned 58-45 Clippers into 64-58 Pacers. What happened? A 19-0 run after a 15-0 run in the same quarter of the game. I don't think I've ever seen that before. That should have been indicative that they were never, ever, ever going to be out of this game. But the game flowed back into the Clippers' favor in the third quarter after the Pacers blew a 13-point lead of their own. And then the Clippers could not give away their lead in the fourth quarter. It kept being tied, and they'd take a lead. It was an insane game that set up for a very similar but less dramatic, in terms of totality situation to what we saw in Utah. In Utah, the Pacers were down 12 with about 6 minutes to go. That requires near perfection. This one was never that big of a deficit for the Pacers, but they entered crunch time down 4 in this one. They go down 5 with 4:28 to go after a Kawhi Leonard three-pointer, and Kawhi was cooking in the fourth quarter. And I only bring up this specific moment because the Clippers scored again after this, but this is when the voodoo and perfection started for the Pacers, was after that Kawhi three. They had to play perfect down the stretch because the Clippers were playing well. They were at home, and the Pacers hadn't been having a good fourth quarter. And the Pacers had an insane next possession where the ball goes to Obi Toppin on the left wing, and he gets involved with the Clippers player trying to steal it, and it goes close to the half-court line. But Toppin recovers it, and now his defender is way out of the play because he tried to steal it. So Toppin has a wide-open lane to the basket, and somehow no Clippers player decided to cut him off until it was too late, and he finished a layup at the rim. Just kind of a voodoo lucky play that worked out for the Pacers, and Toppin had good hands, but that changed the luck for the Pacers. All of a sudden, Siakam steal, and Derrick Jones hits a running layup after 2 Mathurin missed free throws. I know a lot of people thought the game was over at that point, but it wasn't because they had the juju at that moment. And I know they had the juju because on their next possession, Pascal Siakam took a 3 from the left wing that I don't know how it went in. It had the friendliest home court roll of all time, but it bounced in. Clippers take a timeout, and that did nothing. In fact, that Clippers timeout led to over 2.5 minutes of them not hitting another shot from the field while the Pacers were terrific. Thomas Bryant comes in at this time, which is crucial as well. It's 105-103, and Thomas Bryant instantly gets a block. His first possession in, Tyrese Haliburton hits a 3. Tyrese Haliburton had 5 points before that 3. Then Tyrese Haliburton steals the ball from Zubac, runs in for a layup. Pacers go up 3. They get a stop at Derrick Jones at the basket. Thomas Bryant with a clean rebound. They get a rebound after their own miss. Zubac fouls Ben Mathurin, and he hits both free throws after missing 2 crucial ones not that long ago. Just a crazy stretch. That 10-0 run happened like that. They were down 100-105 with 3:12 to go, and we're up 110-105 with 1:41 to go. Under a minute and a half, they went on that 10-0 run. I mean, that's just what this game was just insane runs, like I'm saying, over and over and over. And then the Pacers deserve a ton of credit for continuing to fight in a game like this where they had lots of stretches where they looked terrible and then lots where they looked good. Game was not over at that point. It was still a 5-point game, but another turnover for the Clippers, we'll talk more about those later, led to a Haliburton dunk. Haliburton really came alive when it mattered. It was about to be another game from him, and it became a good game from him with the close. They get one more stop on a missed Derrick Jones 3, which turned into 2 more Mathurin free throws. 9-point game with 53 seconds to go. Even with the Clippers finally remembering how to put the ball in the basket for the final minute, the Pacers made 5 of their 6 free throws and put it away. 119-112 with the final 200 seconds of this game, which means with 3:20 to go, it was 105-100 Clippers. The final 200 seconds of this game was 19-7 Pacers. 19 points in 3 minutes is unbelievably good. They were benefited by the intentional fouling of the Clippers, but even before the final minute, they had 13 points in 2 minutes. Incredible offense, and they were getting it from their defense in steals in those minutes. Really great from the Pacers there on both ends of the floor. Mathurin was great. Haliburton finally got going. Siakam was terrific. Thomas Bryant's defense and rebounding were important. A rare, quiet Andrew Nembhard game did not matter because the Pacers continued to find ways to go on runs. It was the bench in the early second quarter. It was the starters very often, and they found a way to win a game that they had several just terrible stretches. And I think you could argue very easily that in the month of February, they've played 4 games, and they have not played well in any of them, and they're 3-1. That is the mark of a turning to good to great team. That's what good teams do. I keep saying it when they win these games, and they keep doing it, which is not something they've done in their past. And I still haven't talked about, 1, the biggest reason the Pacers won, and 2, the excellent games that just happened from Pascal Siakam and Ben Mathurin. We'll get to that coming up here on Locked On Pacers. Before we do that, though, we need to talk about Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. It's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year. A first match must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings. Account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Whew, we're back here on Locked On Pacers after an insane game. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Or second listen, if you haven't already, go back earlier on Thursday and listen to Derek Kramer and I talk about the trade deadline for the Pacers who traded James Wiseman to the Raptors. We break down the who, the what, the why. They did that very small move and what it could augur for them to do later this season as they could fill out their roster. But they were not done making trades. They traded their fan sanity for a win later that night as they beat the Clippers in just a wild, wild game. I don't remember a game with that many runs of that size. I've seen games of runs where it's like a 7-0 run here, a 9-0 run there, and that still feels like a game of runs where momentum is important. In this game, I've never seen it to that extreme. Like, that would be a painful loss for the Clippers, who probably had several stretches where they felt great, and they couldn't get it done. Being up 20 after one quarter is a peak Mark Monteith theorem game. Three things I want to talk about in the second segment on how they got it done. One was turning defense into offense, right? The Pacers defense was okay. The Clippers shot it fine. They made threes. But the thing that they did very poorly was take care of the ball. 19 turnovers for the Clippers. That is usually a number you see from teams that can't create offense very well or have bad floor generals. Clippers do not have that. But James Harden had 4. Kawhi Leonard had 5. Derek Jones had 3. Every Clipper starter had multiple. In fact, Clipper starters, 16 of those 19 turnovers, despite the bench guys all playing a moderate amount of minutes. They could not take care of the ball, especially in crunch time. And they all felt like very crucially timed turnovers to me in terms of, it was like the Pacers' runs kept snowballing because of them. And so the Pacers had 7 turnovers, which is great. And the Clippers only had 7 points off of those turnovers, right? That's about what you expect. Maybe a little low. They would have liked to have 10 to 12 on that. The Clippers had 19 turnovers, and the Pacers scored 32 points off of them. So not only did the Pacers get plus 12 possessions from the turnover battle, they dominated the transition aspect of this game to like the most extreme extent I would bet that they have seen all season. And that let them overcome a rebounding battle that was slightly in advantage Clippers. It was much bigger advantage Clippers for most of the game, but they were dominant in the turnover battle, not only in forcing them and getting them, but in finishing the plays they generated from those turnovers. That was the biggest, I think, team focus thing that stood out in terms of the Pacers' success in this game. TJ McConnell did not play well. He had almost half the Pacers' turnovers. Two other good stuff things that happened in this game. 2 individuals that deserve a ton of focus and praise for this game. One is Siakam. Pascal is back. Holy cow, was he awesome. After starting 1 for 5, by the way. 13 for 19 from the field. 5 of 6 from deep. What a freaking ridiculous game. Why did I say he started 1 for 5? That's not right. He started 2 for 3 in the first quarter. I was looking at Andrew Nembhard for some reason. I was going to say that doesn't make sense because I remember him being like 10 of 12. Well, regardless of the dumb things I've said many times in this podcast, Siakam was 13 for 19, 5 threes, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, no turnovers. He hit 30 points in the third quarter. I think he'd taken 13 shots at the time when he actually did that because he was making threes in this game and was very efficient with the ball. Awesome game. And what made this one feel unique to me is a lot of his best games or his high scoring games or whatever you want to say. I say something like this on the podcast after. Yes, Siakam was great, and a lot of the reasons he was great was because the other team didn't have a good person to put on him. So they were trying different matchups throughout the game. Detroit stands out as a very recent game where that happened, where they tried Dern on him and Tobias Harris and other guys off the bench, and he had a nice game, right? That happens fairly often because he's quite good and scores in unique ways. This game, the Clippers had players to put on it. Kawhi Leonard was on him. Derrick Jones Jr. was on him. Zubac took a few reps at it. That didn't make any sense. They had Batum, I guess, a little bit. They had the size to do it. And they had the speed in some cases to do it. The Pascal Kawhi matchup was awesome. It was super fun in this game. Regardless, they had matchups that should have, in theory, made Pascal not the just constant go-to guy, but he was. He got in the post and got those steals. He raced ahead in transition. He popped for threes when he needed to pop for threes, and then he drilled those threes. He was a beast on the glass in this game. He was great on Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi got going a little bit in the first and fourth quarters. That was it. Absolutely sensational game from Pascal Siakam. I don't know where it ranks in his season. Boston game, amazing. That game right before they went to Paris where he finally cracked the 30-point code, amazing, right? He's had several terrific games. There's a reason he's an all-star. He's very good at the sport. But tonight, just in a chaotic, crazy, insane game, he was just sort of steady. And that's his whole season baked into 48 minutes, is when the Pacers are low, Pascal Siakam's at his high level playing like this. And when the Pacers are high, Pascal Siakam's at that same high level playing like that. He's so consistent. And in a game like this where it could have gone off the rails very quickly, down 20 early, your center leaves the game with a concussion 2 seconds in. Oh, could have gone bad. And Siakam said, no, we can do this. And he was right. He was awesome. Speaking of awesome, Ben Mathurin. Really awesome Mathurin game. One of my favorite Ben Mathurin games in a while. He was so patient. He had a few moments where I still want him to make the decision a little bit faster, particularly when he's catching the ball with a decent three-point look in front of him. But when he got the dribble going, or when he got into the open floor, one of his best open floor read games in a while, he was 7 for 8 on his twos, and that includes 12 free throw attempts, right? When he got into the middle of the floor, he would get a defender on his back, or he would accelerate at the right time towards Zubac. Zubac has been awesome this season, and the Pacers took advantage of him on that defensive end of the floor. He had 18 and 17, and they still lost his minutes. 18 and 15, excuse me. And Mathurin was very good at attacking him. Mathurin took jumpers when he needed to. He passed it at great times in this game. He was still good on the glass like he usually is. He was so good. His tempo in transition was great. I just thought the way that he approached this game, the way that he was locked into playing the right way in the paint, the way that it allowed him to finish plays and get to good spots was exceptional. And this was a unique one in which Siakam and Mathurin went crazy, and it wasn't because the Pacers were struggling an absolute ton to play fast. They did a good job getting into transition because of those Clippers turnovers, and those two were ready for a faster game and made it happen. Obi Toppin was pretty good, especially inside the arc. Ben Shepherd was awesome. He's not going to get enough shine on this podcast because of how good Mathurin and Siakam were. Shepherd had his first 4 shots and had 10 points at halftime. They would have been down more than 20 if it weren't for Ben Shepherd's terrific first quarter. And Thomas Bryant, double, 10 boards in this game. He had to play a ton because of the last thing that requires conversation from this game. Myles Turner gets hurt. This is the worst thing Mathurin did in this game. He accidentally got Turner in the face as fighting for a rebound late in the first quarter. He left the game and he was bleeding. You could see his face bleeding when the broadcast cut to him on the bench. And he almost stumbled when he was being helped to the bench by his teammates. So James Johnson, 2 trainers took him back. He's being evaluated for a concussion. I guess I said concussion earlier. We don't know that. He's being evaluated for one. During the game, he did not return. He tweeted a funny meme of a WWE meme of him and Mathurin after the game, which made me laugh and made me think he's in good spirits, which is the only indication I have of anything. But that is obviously reading way too much between the lines. Regardless, they needed Bryant to be, and Turner was not good in those 6 minutes. He was over 4 at the time. They needed Bryant to step up and be great. And Thomas Bryant's first double-double with the Pacers. His previous rebound high was 8. He had 10 in this game. He was much better than he was when he had to start and play big minutes in Utah. He didn't finish plays at a high enough level, missing 3 twos and 3 threes, but he made 2 threes. He was good on the glass. He had 4 assists. He stepped up in a big way too. So lots of guys were good. Haliburton was great late after a very slow game. Until that point, he had 4 steals as well. Lots of guys did stuff when it mattered, but the turnovers by the Clippers and the Pacers taking advantage of it, Pascal Siakam and Ben Mathurin were these standout things to me in this Pacers not so unbelievable comeback win to improve to 29-21. Through 50 games, they have 29 wins. Who would have thought that when they were 10-15. They just went 19-6 in their 25 games since then. They are playing awesome. And they're not even playing that well right now, which is funny because I just said they're playing awesome, but they're finding ways to win, and they'll try to do it again when they play the Lakers in their next game. We'll talk about that one after Saturday when the game actually happens. But right now, I want to wrap up the trade deadline on this podcast by talking about other moves that I thought mattered to the Pacers that were made, whether it was their own stuff getting traded or teams around them in the standings, or that they play a lot in their division. And it gives me an excuse to talk about these trades. So we're going to close out today's show with that. Before we get to that, though, we need to talk about Game Time. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. If you've been using Game Time Picks for a while now, you can see those curated deals that make it simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. If you do, though, you'll find super deals. You'll find seat views, so you know what you're going to see when you get to the venue. You have no hidden fees, so you see the exact final price before you get to that last screen. And the Game Time's lowest price guarantee means they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, teams that had crazy trade deadlines. The Wizards did a lot of selling. The Grizzlies confused me quite a bit. The Heat traded Jimmy Butler. Obviously, the Luka stuff happened last weekend. If you're interested in the Lakers stuff, they just played a nuts game against the Warriors. There were lots of crazy trades. The Raptors traded for Brandon Ingram. That one surprised me. Any of those shows would be a great second listen. I'm rubbing my eyes. I need to get through this. Some trades that I think matter for the Pacers. The first one I'm going to say is funny because I wrote this in this section and then it became null after something else happened, but it actually is going to lead to a second conversation. So much has been made about the Pacers' leverage potentially with Myles Turner this summer in re-signing him because there's not going to be a lot out there for him from other teams. His bird rights might specifically be valuable to the Pacers. Well, the Charlotte Hornets were very funny. They traded away Vasa Micic and Cody Martin and Mark Williams, and they didn't take back any long-term money in these deals. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, the Hornets, who I forget which trade deadline, but at one point had interest in Myles Turner, might have a lot of cap space in the summer. I thought, oh, that's going to be my lead. That'll be the first thing I talk about. And then they traded for Yusuf Nurkic, who has guaranteed money next year. And now it just is totally ruined. And they could get off money if they want, but are they going to really trade away assets to them? They're not going to do that. It makes more sense for them to stay over the cap in the summer. So that got nuked, but that wasn't the end of that discussion because now it's more clear. It's not a lock because the draft can change things. What teams will have space this summer? It currently projects to be just Memphis, Brooklyn, and maybe Detroit, which is a fascinating group to me. Brooklyn is crazy. They could have an absolute ton of cap space. Ben Simmons, Bojan, DeAnthony Melton coming off the books. So they could afford, they could easily keep up with a potential Myles Turner contract pursuit, right? But they have Nick Claxton. So what would be the point of that for them, right? They already have a center paid, which is a crucial thing to say. They don't seem like a threat to me. The Pistons, though, maybe would because of the way that their centers play with Duren and Stewart. They're not really stretchy. Turner would fit that team very well, and they can get to $27 million pretty easily in cap space, which might be enough for the first year salary of Myles Turner. They're the team that I've actually been mentioning a few times in the last month. What scared me the most is the Pacers right now. But getting to $27 million for them means no Tim Hardaway Jr., no Dennis Schroeder, who they traded for on deadline day, and no Malik Beasley. And I think it means no draft pick. Depending on where they end this season, we'll see how that shakes out. So if they decide they want a stylistic change from Duren or Beef Stew, would be the team to keep an eye on because I think a lot of the Grizzlies moves they made, and they could be under the cap, but not by like a ton. Maybe like 21 million, I think, is the projection right now, and that's with no Kennard, no Aldama. If they get to that 20 million under, yeah, maybe they could do it, but they have Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr., right? That doesn't seem like something that makes sense for them. Same thing that the Nets have, which is why the Pistons still started the deadline, and then the Hornets came in the picture and then came out of the picture, and the Pistons emerge as the only team to me that makes some semblance of sense as a Myles Turner competitor for the Pacers in the summer. But that's just my opinion. Perhaps they like their centers enough to not do that. So in general, probably a neutral impact deadline, maybe a little bit of Memphis-ish fear if they trade Edey for an upgrade and then they want to play a center next to JJJ like they've done with Steven Adams, but I wouldn't think so. Let's talk about some trades that matter standings-wise for the Pacers. Oh, actually, just some connections. One, the Pacers' first rounder that they sent to Toronto in the Pascal Siakam trade went to the Pelicans in the Brandon Ingram trade. So not a Raptors thing anymore, which means the final return for the Raptors for Siakam would be Jacoby Walter, who they picked with the Pacers pick last year. Ochai Agbaji, who they got with the latest pick the Pacers had in last year's draft that went to the Jazz. And Kelly Olynyk, basically a season from him. Bruce Brown, the half season they got from him. And then Brandon Ingram, who they traded Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk for. So Ingram, Jacoby Walter, Ochai Agbaji, and some contributions from Kelly Olynyk or Bruce Brown. I think the Pacers would rather have Siakam than that, although that's a decent haul, but not very good. The other thing that is interesting is the tax distribution went way down. Lots of teams got out of the tax. The Cavs got out of the tax. The Mavs got out. I don't know if they got back in or not. The Sixers got out. The Pelicans got out. A lot of teams got out of the tax. So the amount of money coming to the Pacers from tax distributions will be lower. It'll still be upwards of $10 million. I haven't calculated it, but that is a significant deal for them, but still worth it, obviously, for them to stay under. They were already under. Okay, let's talk about the teams around the Pacers in the standings, because this is always a very interesting thing. Did anybody go for it in the East this year? The Cavs. They were the only one, which is fascinating to me. The Cavs traded Karis LeVert, George Niang, and 3 seconds and some swaps that probably won't matter for DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter, playing great this year. Good scorer, good shooter. The Pacers just torched him. His defense is a little overrated. And people thought his contract was negative value like 4 months ago. The Hawks might have sold high, but maybe he'll be great for the Cavs because his role will be very easy there. Regardless, he's better than what they sent out, right? Niang always felt like the worst fit of their rotation players there. LeVert's a better defender than Hunter, but now they have Ty Jerome with that second unit. They don't need LeVert's ball handling as much. So this does make sense for their team. They did need a big wing added into their rotation. So they're probably a little better for this. Everyone else in the East, I can't really say that I think they improved a lot. Celtics traded away stuff to get off some money. Goodbye, Jaden Springer. Knicks traded away Jericho Sims. They got Daylon Wright. Maybe he'll be in the rotation at some point. I guess I've always really liked Daylon Wright, but his teams do not seem to want to keep him around for some reason. And then there's this morass of teams behind the Pacers. One of them is the Magic, who did nothing, which is very confusing to me. One of them is the Milwaukee Bucks, who, pending a change in player approach to the game, might have had the worst trade deadline day of anybody to me, besides the Mavs, obviously, who traded Luka Doncic for some reason. Chris Middleton and stuff for Kuzma, weird. Unless Kuzma from the Lakers is back, the third option guy who knows how to play team ball, the guy that was there in Washington. Whew. Beauchamp for KPJ with the Clippers, who the Pacers just played. That's a vibes killer, but I guess that's an upgrade. Daylon Wright for Sims gives them a 5 that they need. Like, maybe those reserves actually help them. They hunted them down for a reason, although a little bit of cost cutting going on there. But if Kuzma can't be as good as Middleton, which feels somewhat reasonable to me, although Middleton toggles between great and terrible this year, they could just be worse. I don't think that they will be worse, but they could just be stabilizing or a little worse. I would guess that the Bucks come out in the wash from this stuff, but they also got their spending in order, which is helpful for them. They needed to get out of the second apron. But getting your spending in order to get worse is not what the team in fifth usually does. So weird trade deadline for Milwaukee. The Heat in sixth, obviously they traded away Jimmy Butler. I think they did pretty good value-wise there. He was giving them a 0, and he was going to opt out potentially to get Wiggins and a first and Davion Mitchell, and I'm forgetting the other piece that they ended up with in that. Oh, Kyle Anderson. That's good stuff. I actually like that a bit for the Heat, and in theory, they could be better. They could bounce up because they now have a wing in Wiggins who's good and is going to play. Obviously, Butler was better, but he was giving them nothing for like over a month, and they're still firmly in sixth. So I think the Heat got better. Did they get good enough to catch the Pacers? It's a 3.5 game gap right now. I don't know. I don't know about that, but maybe the Heat should be pretty good now. But that's the only team that got significantly better in this range. Detroit took in Dennis Schroeder, took in Lindy Waters, and I can't remember the third player they got. They were doing a lot of stuff. They were very big facilitators at this deadline. So they're probably a little bit better. They really needed a second ball handler when Jaden Ivey got hurt, so Schroeder will help them. They're under 500 right now. We'll see if they can catch the Pacers. Magic did nothing. Hawks got off a Hunter. We'll see if they're better as well. They also traded Bogdan Bogdanovic for Terrence Mann. So I think they're actually better with Mann in there. LeVert will help them with some ball handling. Their defense should be a little better. I like the Hawks day. I think they'll be a little better, but they just lost 8 in a row not that long ago. Can they catch the Pacers? They're currently 7.5 back of them. The Bulls traded away Zach LaVine. The Sixers got off of Reggie Jackson and Caleb Martin. So the Sixers might just stumble into 10th, but nobody got so much better that I think, oh, it's so clear they can catch the Pacers. Maybe the Heat. Not because the value is better. Jimmy Butler's a better player than anybody they got, but because Jimmy Butler was giving them specifically 0 for, I mean, really this is going on since Christmas, right? So like a month and a half-ish. Maybe they'll be better just by having bought in players. But if they didn't improve, or if you don't think the Heat improved, then really nobody besides the Cavs took a step forward around the Pacers in the East. And I kind of expected it would be a weird trade deadline year because of the low cap growth and all the aprons, but the West was nuts. A ton of stars got traded in the West. So unless you think Toronto with Ingram's going to climb up to 10th or this crazy Hawks run is coming, I don't think there are many this season impactful trades on the Pacers. But the cap space part of this next year I thought was important. The tax distribution I thought was important. The Pacers Siakam deal becoming a little more crystallized in terms of how that package looks. I thought that was interesting. And that is the trade deadline in Pacerland. If I missed something or you thought a different trade affects the Pacers in a way I didn't say, or I missed a trade for a team that I talked about, let me know. Winners of the deadline, to me, it's hard to say. I mean, it was a weird one. The Washington Wizards, I think, had an awesome deadline, and the Lakers got Luka Doncic. I don't know if you heard that. They are the big winners as well. Check out those shows for more on what those teams did. Back on Saturday night, talking Pacers, Lakers. Maybe the Luka debut. Sounds like it's not. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East. This podcast is there at Locked On Pacers. I'm on Blue Sky at Tony R. East as well. Thank you all for listening to 2 in 1 Day. Back Saturday talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.